Hello and welcome to Asia Newsweek. I'm Girish Sawlani. Our top story. Hong Kong media tycoon Jimmy Lai has testified in court for the first time in a national security trial that could see him sentenced to life in prison. Mr. Lai is one of Hong Kong's most influential pro-democracy figures and the founder of the now shuttered newspaper Apple Daily. He was arrested in 2020 during a crackdown by authorities. Accused of colluding with foreign forces, the 76-year-old took the stand just days after 45 Hong Kong Democrats were sentenced to jail for up to 10 years.
A bleak day in Hong Kong, some supporters describing the downpour as the city's tears for imprisoned media mogul Jimmy Lai.
I wanted to go to court to say hi to Jimmy and let him know he has supporters. I haven't let the rain put me off.
The case is being discussed at the highest levels of international politics, with the US President-elect saying he's confident he could secure Mr. Lai's release.
Do you think you could speak to Xi when you're back in the presidency about getting Jimmy Lai out and out of the country?
100% yes.
My father has turned 77. He's been kept in solitary confinement in completely inhumane conditions for the last almost 4 years now. To be frank, his health isn't very good.
Accused of colluding with foreign forces under the Beijing-imposed national security law, Mr. Lai defended his US connections in court, saying of his meetings with then US Vice President Mike Pence, "I would not dare to ask the US to do anything. I just related to him what happened in Hong Kong and asked them to voice their support for Hong Kong." Mr. Lai rose to prominence as a businessman and then media mogul. His paper Apple Daily was strongly pro-democratic and often critical of authorities.
Jimmy Lai was taken through a graphic of all his foreign friends and connections, on which, remarkably, Donald Trump was included. Mr. Lai said he's never met or even communicated indirectly with the president-elect. Even so, this case has the potential to be quite the headache for the Chinese leadership as it braces for a more combative relationship with the US under the incoming Trump administration.
The whole trial is a textbook show trial. It's not just my opinion, it's shared by many different states, including the US, UK.
But for now, his fate lies in the hands of 3 national security judges in a courtroom in Hong Kong. Kathleen Calderwood, ABC News, Hong Kong.
And we'll have more on this a little later when I speak with Kevin Yam, a pro-democracy activist based here in Australia and is wanted by Hong Kong authorities. One of the richest men in the world, Indian billionaire Gautam Adani, has been charged over a years-long bribery scheme in the United States. A US federal court indicted Mr. Adani, who leads the Adani Energy Group, for misleading investors over a multi-billion-dollar fraud scheme. Now, 7 other associates, including his nephew, were also charged. Prosecutors say the 62-year-old and 2 other executives agreed to pay around 400 million Australian dollars to Indian government officials to secure lucrative solar energy contracts. The Adani Group has denied the allegations. At least 42 people have been killed by gunmen who opened fire on a convoy of 200 vehicles carrying Shiite Muslims in a remote area of Pakistan. The wounded were taken to a hospital in Kurram, where relatives were waiting. Authorities say the vehicles were attacked as they went through a tribal district close to the Afghan border. Police were traveling with the convoy following months of sectarian violence in the area. And a woman in Thailand accused of murdering 14 friends with cyanide has been sentenced to death. 36-year-old Sararat Rangsi Wuttaporn has been found guilty of putting poison in a wealthy friend's food and drink while they were on a trip last year. Police uncovered other similar deaths going back to 2015. Police say Sararat, described as AmCyanide by local media, had a gambling addiction and targeted friends she owed money to, then stole their jewelry and valuables.
The fact that she got away for so long, it's been nearly 10 years for this 14 cases. It means the justice system, the forensic science, the local police were really not up to the task. It took this last case, or the latest case, which became the last case before all was exposed. But for 9 years, 13 people prior to the latest victim died under a mysterious circumstances, and yet nothing was done. There was no case until the latest one, which led to the verdict.
At least 5 people have died from a suspected mass methanol poisoning in Laos, including Australian teenager Bianca Jones. The 19-year-old and her friend Holly Bowles were backpacking together when they became critically ill after consuming poisoned drinks last week. Southeast Asia correspondent Lauren Day filed this report.
Well, after what must just have been such an agonising week for the families of both of these young women, we've now had confirmation that Bianca Jones, who was in hospital up in Thailand's north in Udon Thani province, has died. Her family has released a statement saying that she was surrounded by love and that they have been really moved by just how many people her spirit has touched. They have said that they were grateful for all of the love and support that they have received, but now that they've asked for privacy while they grieve. We've heard politicians from right across the spectrum paying tribute to Bianca Jones, and it really does feel like a story that could happen to anyone. So many young Australians travel throughout Southeast Asia. It's a real rite of passage for people. So this will no doubt be hitting home for a lot of people. And of course, Bianca's best friend, Holly Bowles, is still in hospital in a critical condition here in Bangkok. So this will no doubt be a blow to her family, who is still by her bedside. Bianca Jones is now the 4th person to die from this suspected mass methanol poisoning incident. There were 2 young Danish women who have died, as well as a young American man, and we understand that around 14 people have fallen gravely ill as a result of this. All of them had been holidaying in Vang Vieng in Laos, which is a party town that a lot of young people go to drink, to go out, and also to do adventure sports. And most of them, it appears, were staying at a backpacker hostel, the Nana Backpackers Hostel, and they started their night there with free drinks. There were about 100 people there. I've spoken to the hostel owner. He is adamant that the suspect drinks did not come from his bar. He says that police have already tested the alcohol at his bar and found that he's done nothing wrong. We'll see what the police investigation does find, but it appears to have so far been lacklustre. Police didn't even close down the bar or hostel when these stories began to emerge. So now, particularly with the death of Bianca Jones, there will no doubt be a lot of international pressure on Laos authorities to get to the bottom of just how this tragedy has happened.
China's president has declared relations with Australia have now turned around and flagged even stronger trade ties during a meeting with the Prime Minister at the G20 in Brazil. Xi Jinping is seeking the support of Australia and others to push back at hefty tariffs promised by Donald Trump. Anthony Albanese has welcomed the improved relationship, but still raised a list of concerns with China. The ABC's national political lead, David Spears, filed this report from Brazil on Tuesday.
Too late. Joe Biden was among a few leaders who missed out on this G20 group photo. Instead, Xi Jinping was centre stage, and alongside him, Anthony Albanese. The two leaders met earlier, China's president noting the relationship has gone through twists and turns, but declaring better times are ahead.
Now our relations have realised a turnaround and continues to grow.
After imposing sanctions on Australian exports, which have since been removed, Xi Jinping has become a champion of free trade, and it's no secret why.
We're going to tariff the hell out of them.
Donald Trump takes office in 2 months and is promising to hit China with the steepest tariffs. China may have punished Australia with trade sanctions over recent years, but now wants to persuade the Albanese government to help push back against Donald Trump's tariffs. The Prime Minister, like others here at the G20, is all for free trade, but wants it known this is not due to any pressure from Xi Jinping.
China will speak on behalf of China. My job is to speak on behalf of Australia.
Anthony Albanese refers to the relationship stabilising rather than achieving a turnaround, and used the meeting to again raise points of concern.
I raised the issues of human rights, I raised Taiwan, I raised cyber.
He also raised the plight of Australian citizen Yang Hengjun, given a suspended death sentence in China. All this behind closed doors. Unlike the British Prime Minister, who listed his complaints with the Chinese while the cameras were still in the room.
We are concerned by reports of Jimmy Lai's deterioration, health in prison.
Jimmy Lai is a pro-democracy publisher who's been held in solitary confinement for more than 4 years after a crackdown in Hong Kong. After his name was mentioned, British journalists were quickly moved out of the room. Free trade is one thing, free speech another. David Spears, ABC News, Rio de Janeiro.
A driver has been arrested after a vehicle struck students and pedestrians outside a primary school in central China. A large number of children and their parents were walking into the school in Changde when an SUV drove into the crowd. Chinese media say many people were injured, but no deaths have been reported. It's not clear whether the incident was deliberate, but it follows a spate of violent attacks in the country, including a car ramming in southern China just over a week ago. That incident killed 35 people. The interim government of Bangladesh has announced it will seek to extradite former Prime Minister SheikhHasina from India. Hasina fled her home country in August during a mass uprising that ended her 15-year rule. The current interim leader and Nobel Peace Laureate Muhammad Yunus says around 1,500 people lost their lives during those protests and is promising those responsible will be held to account.
We must ensure justice for every killing. The initiative we've undertaken to seek justice for the murders in July to August is also progressing well. We will also demand the return of the fallen autocrat SheikhHasina from India.
A court in Pakistan has granted bail to jailed former Prime Minister Imran Khan relating to the illegal sale of state gifts. The ex-politician and former cricket star has been in prison for over a year, but it remains unclear if he will be released as he faces other charges, including accusations of inciting violence against the state.
The problem is that Mr. Imran Khan faces court cases, many other court cases. Some say it could be as high as 150 court cases still pending against him. I mean, the number ranges between 100 and 150. He's already been sentenced in 4 or 5 cases and been sentenced to prison terms ranging from anything between 4 and 10 years. So really, his release is, I don't think, something that we can expect anytime soon.
Super Typhoon Man-yi has flooded much of the Philippines' largest island, with a search and rescue underway in the country's northern regions. 8 deaths have been reported since Man-yi made landfall, and more than 1 million people have had to take shelter. Landslides and damage to buildings have also been reported across the island of Luzon. Man-yi is the 6th tropical cyclone to hit the Philippines in a month, which have killed at least 160 people so far.
The communities have been hit by typhoons again and again, the same communities. So you can see massive amount of compounded impact. So before they could bounce back, they are hit by another typhoon, and that's what actually made them extremely vulnerable. The lives lost, I think that is not probably the only indicator for any of this kind of disaster, but the amount of loss people have in terms of livelihoods, that is catastrophic. So the sea temperature is rising, the temperature is rising in general, which is leading to huge amount of humidity, and all the other factors, which is basically leading to more typhoon hitting the same areas, and these typhoons are getting more intense every single day. And this is unprecedented. Like no country probably, like from the time this tropical cyclone has been started recording in 1951, no country has received 6 typhoons in less than 1 month period. So we can very clearly see that yes, it's all because of climate change, and it is very real.
Let's return to Hong Kong now, where dozens of pro-democracy figures have been sentenced up to 10 years. Kevin Yam is a democracy activist and former lawyer. Now he's a research fellow with the Centre for Comparative Constitutional Studies at Melbourne Law School, and he joins me now. Kevin, welcome to Asia Newsweek.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Now, many of these 45 pro-democracy activists and politicians, you've described some of them as friends and comrades. Can you tell us what was going through your mind when you heard that they were sentenced, and was it something that you expected?
I was actually at a lunchtime seminar when the sentencing was announced, and it was really devastating. And as soon as that seminar was over, I literally had to leave and find a quiet corner for a bit of a sob. As to whether the sentencing was expected, I don't like to think about it in that way, because I think once you talk about expectations, you fall into the trap of the Chinese Communist Party, because there's been this narrative in recent days that, the sentencing is not as bad as everyone thought it might be. that's the implication of that, is that for something like this, there is a reasonable range of sentencing. No, there isn't. Even 1 second is too much in terms of these people being in jail. They should never have been arrested, never have been charged, never have been convicted, never have been sentenced.
And do you believe that the magnitude of the sentencing sends a message to Hong Kong people?
I think the mere fact that these people are in jail already sends a very big message to Hong Kong people. But the problem is that the lines are actually not clear. You never know whether they're going to shift the red lines more and more and more as time goes on. So it's a period of great uncertainty and difficulty.
And speaking of red lines, I mean, what can you tell us about the basis upon which the 45 were convicted based on the national security law?
So what happened was that in July 2020, just after the national security law came into force, the group that's been convicted were all pro-democracy activists and politicians, were involved in an informal primary election to choose a set of candidates to run in the Legislative Council elections in Hong Kong that year, which was later cancelled. But the point was that the candidates, many of them were promising that if the pro-democracy forces were ever to get a majority within the Legislative Council, they would block the budget until the government relents on democratization. So basically, they were trying to work within Hong Kong's constitutional system, dealing with the Legislative Council, and there are provisions within Hong Kong's mini-constitution, the basic law, about how to deal with budgetary deadlocks in the legislature. None of that mattered to the judges. They just said, oh, you're subverting state power by daring to run this election, daring to suggest that you might block the budget.
Kevin, tell me, what do you think about how Hong Kong can even maintain any semblance of democracy when you've got the most influential pro-democracy activists, politicians like Joshua Wong, Claudia Mo, and then of course Jimmy Lai, the media mogul, founder of Apple Daily, facing trial. He's already in prison. What hope is there for democracy in Hong Kong?
Well, it's obviously very difficult times, and that at the moment it's fair to say that a lot of people are lying low, and that obviously there are those of us who are now overseas who are continuing to speak out on the issues. But to use an analogy that is often applied to Hong Kong in recent years, and this whole idea that there are nails in the coffin when it comes to Hong Kong's one country, two systems, or as an international city and all that, I think China needs to be careful, because they've now put so many nails into this coffin that the structural integrity of this coffin is now in question, and it's only a matter of time that the timber in the coffin is going to be loose enough that we can all break free.
Yeah, and on that note, how are you feeling? I mean, you are abroad, but also you are openly advocating for a democratic Hong Kong, and I understand, of course, there is an arrest warrant out for you there. Do you fear for your safety at all? And on another point, do you ever foresee yourself ever returning to Hong Kong?
Well, there's not much I can do about safety-related issues. It is what it is. But in terms of Hong Kong, whether I can ever return, I'm confident that one day I'll return to Hong Kong safe and sound, and that the city will be free again.
Okay, Kevin Yam, really, really good to speak to you on Asia Newsweek. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
A woman who's been on death row in Indonesia for 14 years will return home to the Philippines. Mary Jane Veloso was arrested in 2010 on drug trafficking charges for carrying 2.6 kilograms of heroin in her suitcase. She was scheduled to be executed with the Bali 9 in 2015, but there was an outcry in the Philippines, with many believing her claim she'd been used as a mule. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has thanked his Indonesian counterpart. The two Southeast Asian countries have been negotiating for years. An Australian grandmother accused of importing 2 kilograms of methamphetamine into Japan has spoken in court for the first time. Donna Nelson claims a love scammer tricked her into transporting the drugs. Here's North Asia correspondent James Oden in Chiba in Japan.
The daughters of Donna Nelson have waited a long time to hear their mum speak, since she was detained 2 years ago with no family communication allowed.
I really wish that this morning I'd be able to let her know how much love and support she has.
The court heard Donna Nelson had been romantically involved with a man named Kelly. He lived in Japan and spoke of his extensive fashion business. For 2 years, the pair talked of their love via text messages and video chats. He seemed like a gentleman, Ms Nelson said. I was flattered and happy. After several failed attempts to meet each other abroad, Donna Nelson accepted his offer of a flight to Japan with a stopover in Laos. She picked up a sample bag Kelly said was for his business, which she did not declare. Customs officers at Tokyo's Narita airport found 2 kilograms of methamphetamine hidden inside. Is it true you transported this suitcase knowing what was inside? Her defence lawyer asked. No, it's not true, Ms Nelson responded. Is it true you transported the suitcase knowing there might be illegal substances? That's incorrect. The man, known as Kelly, is not part of the case. His true identity and whereabouts are unknown. Donna Nelson's lawyers are suggesting it was not unusual for the Australian divorcee to travel abroad for love. Donna Nelson had already met with 2 romantic hopefuls that resided in the United States before she met Kelly, and her daughter married someone she met online who lived in the UK.
I'm hoping that the judges can see that she's been a victim of this love scam and that she was not aware at all of what was in that suitcase.
Donna Nelson faces up to 20 years jail if she's found guilty. James Oaten, ABC News, Chiba.
Well, this week, New Delhi took the title of the world's most polluted city as it remained shrouded in heavy smog. But the effects of polluted air are experienced differently across the city. For those living near towering landfill sites, exposure to toxic smog feels even more intense.
Hema lives just metres away from this mountain of rubbish in New Delhi.
When there's a lot of dust in the air, I become breathless. I start feeling anxious when it's hot and the chemical waste oozes fumes around because sometimes it rots over a long period.
As Delhi's smog problem intensifies, it makes it even harder for people who live close to these landfills to breathe, as toxic waste emits harmful gases like methane and carbon dioxide.
So they're breathing 2 kinds of things. They're breathing direct landfill pollution and they're breathing the general air pollution. So it definitely gets much worse for them.
This landfill is one of 3 in the outskirts of New Delhi, which was ordered to be cleared back in 2019, a deadline that's been repeatedly delayed. Many who live nearby came from smaller villages to the city in search of work.
The amount of pollution in Delhi's air, the poison in the air, it's not there in the villages. Although there are fewer employment opportunities in the village, we would have at least been able to breathe properly.
Every winter, India battles severe air pollution as cold, heavy air traps dust, emissions and smoke from farmers burning crop waste in states like Punjab and Haryana. This week has seen some eye-watering statistics, as parts of Delhi recorded air pollution levels hitting around 1,000 on India's Air Quality Index, which counts a measurement above 400 as hazardous. Workplaces have urged employees to work from home, and it's led to the shutdown of schools. But for those who live and work outdoors, the impacts are felt differently.
These are people without the best access to healthcare. These are malnourished, vulnerable, poor people. So they themselves don't have the resilience that a middle-class person may have.
Delhi's air pollution might be pervasive, but it impacts some more than others. Madeline Lo-Booth, ABC News.
Now, would you drink something that was made from treated sewage? Well, at COP29, delegates have been able to try cans of beer made from treated wastewater from Singapore. Jokingly referred to as sewage beer, it's safe to drink and is being used to highlight Singapore's water conservation efforts, including the use of recycled wastewater. Now, Singapore does not have natural water sources, and its water management strategies have been seen as leading by other countries for many years. Well, in Hong Kong, being invited for coffee by anti-corruption officers is a well-known metaphor for being brought in for questioning. It's so well known, Hong Kong's ICAC is trading on the phrase to celebrate its 50th birthday by opening a café in its lobby. Named after the year it was founded, 1974's slogan is "We Brew Integrity." Patrons can order coffees with names like confidentiality and anti-corruption and learn more about the commission through displays of memorabilia from past ICAC cases. Thailand's capital is introducing strict new rules around pet ownership, forcing owners to register and microchip cats and dogs and limiting the number of pets they can own. Those who breach the rules face fines and even jail time, leaving critics concerned the crackdown could result in more pets being abandoned.
These are some of the animals who've fallen victim to Bangkok's notoriously busy roads.
This is all dogs that we rescue from the street, Thai street, and everywhere in Bangkok. They got hit by car, they got abandoned, or they got some violent thing.
In their custom-built wheelchairs, they're different dogs. And some, like French Fry, have even made miraculous recoveries.
So we did operation, acupuncture, for almost, how long ago, huh? 8 months. 8 months altogether. So now here, normal dogs now.
Thailand's a nation of animal lovers, and the pet market here is growing by about 10% a year. But so too is the number of animals that are abandoned on the streets.
As a result, many end up starving, injured and carrying diseases like rabies. To combat the problem, the council runs mobile clinics like this, which provide free vaccinations and sterilisations.
I told him that you go around and make girl cats pregnant, so I'm taking you here.
But the vets are struggling to keep up.
We are trying as fast as we can to solve the problems that people complain about. But to be honest, we can't keep up with it.
So the government is introducing new laws to force owners to register and microchip their pets. It also limits the number they can own based on the size of their homes.
Every single one in Bangkok knows that stray animal and losing control of animal is one of the problems of Bangkok.
While the new rules have been welcomed by animal shelters, there's scepticism anyone will actually follow them and concerns it could even cause more people to dump their pets for fear of fines.
We are afraid that people will abandon the dog more, so we should prepare, for this kind by educate them first.
Bangkok's Deputy Governor admits that is possible, but is trying to reassure pet owners they won't be punished for having too many animals when the deadline arrives.
You only just tell the district office, register that you have exceeded the number. We allow you to continue having the pets that exceed the number until that exceed number die.
Anyone whose dog bites another person or barks too loudly, however, could face up to a month in prison, putting people behind bars instead of pets. Lauren Day, ABC News, Bangkok.
And that's the program. Thank you so much for your company, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.